Let me know, Brielle, when we're live.
It says it is.
We're live.
We are live. Okay. Thank you all and welcome everyone. Please share this broadcast with your friends and colleagues.
I am.
My name is Rick Ulfik and I am founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. There you can learn more about We the World. Today is day 7 of 11 Days of Global Unity that goes from September 11th to the 21st, which is the UN International Day of Peace. And this is our 16th anniversary. Back in 2004, We the World brought together global partners like Amnesty International and United Religions Initiative to launch 11 Days of Global Unity. This year, 11 Days is concurrent with the Up Convergence and Peace Weekend, an extraordinary alliance of organizations including Unity Earth, the Compassion Games, the Sign Network, We the World, and over 100 groups that represent an unprecedented unity movement, which I believe is needed now more than ever before. To learn more and participate in 11 Days of Global Unity and the 11 campaigns for change, that go all year long, you can go to 11daysofglobalunity.org. And that 11 is a numeral, 11daysofglobalunity.org. Each year, We the World hosts the 11 Days of Global Unity TeleSummit with 11 powerful dialogues on each of the campaigns for change. They're happening September 11th through the 21st, each day starting at 1 p.m. USA Eastern Time. And today, day 7 of 11 Days of Global Unity, we're going to be talking on the campaign for women. And we have 2 remarkable women to talk to, Antoinette Hall and Alexandra Loves. Let's start with Antoinette. Antoinette, hi. Antoinette Root's daughter, Hall, is a marketing and public relations expert who is currently doing marketing and PR for Unity Earth. As a world-renowned keyboardist and musical minister in Pato Bonton's spiritual family and a social spiritual activist, she travels the globe promoting world peace and unity. Welcome to the broadcast, Antoinette.
Thank you so much, Rick. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on. And, you know, one of the interesting things that came up in recent weeks that I thought we could talk about is this idea of the Wall of Moms International. Would you like to talk about that? And of course, put it in the context of your work in general and what we're talking about today, which is the current status of women in our country and our world.
Well, as you know, the work that we've done with Unity Earth and the U-Day Festival on the convergences, you know, throughout the years from back in 2012 when we started working on the theme of coexist and interfaith. The last trip that we were actually on, which was in Jordan, Palestine, and Israel, and we had half of the group was actually women. But when we came back, we came right back into the COVID situation, which also led into the protesting and the riots after the death of George Floyd. All of a sudden, this became like one of the most national and international issues on the subject of racial discrimination, police injustice, racial brutality, police brutality. It's like all of a sudden the attention, the focus the world started to wake up and start to realize what was actually happening. The Wall of Moms started in Portland with a group of mothers who went out there to protect the protesters. And it became national and international news because they started to say, who are these women who are mothers? And they're white women. It's not like it's just a bunch of Black people who are out there protesting, but you see these white women who are putting their bodies in front of Black lives, you know, being tear gassed, being rubber bulleted, all these different issues. As I'm watching the streams, and we're all having our own protests within our own cities, we're all getting involved, you know, in the movement in some type of way. I became involved when they kind of turned the group over to me. And that's when I made it international, because I don't actually live in Portland. I live in California. But the theme of Black Lives Matter is something that is international. It's national, it's international. It's not something that is specific to just Portland. It's also specific to all across the country, and the issues that we're trying to raise, which is awareness. And levels of protest can be from anything from the street level all the way into the academic level, into the schools, into the healthcare, into the judicial, even in the jobs and economic systems as well too. So that's why another reason why we decided to make it international was like, let's address the issues other than what's happening on the streets and happening with the police. This is a lifelong commitment that we all need to actually address these issues.
Right. And so the Wall of Moms was actually, um, it sort of grew up, protecting the protesters, right?
Yes, it happened very fast. It happened, from what I understand, it happened within a matter of days. I guess, and when the federal agents have come in, the people who originally started the Wall of Moms are no longer available. And then the group had splintered off into other groups. So they started to form into like 3 or 4 other groups and organizations out of Portland. So by the time it landed in my lap, I was the only one left standing there. And that's one of the reasons why I had to like really start to build a team and build an organization and build, just kind of just build off of what was already existing, which was a lot of curious women and a lot of women who are waking up. The group at the time was 16,000 people. And then we found out 10,000 of these women actually live nationally and internationally across the world.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And that's
amazing,
in a
right?
matter of days. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So then, this kind of coming together could, um, actually begin to address other things. It came because of the protests, but there are so many other things to address,
Yes,
right?
because you see the women, the way that I see the women, and we ask them very specific questions when they enter inside of the group. Do you support Black Lives Matter? And if you could support, what are the ways that you could actually support? And why are you here? So there's a lot of different questions, because a lot of them felt like, okay, so if they can either put their bodies in front of the line of the protesting, but we found out that a lot more actually want to work within Black community outreach. So we have people who want to work in Black community outreach. We have people who want to work on voter registration. We have people who want to work on voter suppression, people who want to work on getting more education within the schools, as well as getting more equity and equality within the hospitals. So there's all these other different departments that we're seeing where a lot of these women are offering their help and their services. So even though it is under Black leadership, there's a lot of white women, a lot of brown women, a lot of BIPOC women, a lot of Native and Indigenous women that are actually coming together and saying, "Hey, let's actually work together and do something positive." And like I said, it's something that me and Alexandra talk about all the time. It's like, this is a commitment that we ask of people, that it's a lifelong commitment. It's not like you just come out for a few days or you offer a few hours of your time or your service, but you're committed to ending systemic racism for all of us, because it actually affects all of us. But we need people who are like, I'm ready, I'm down for this, to the end.
Exactly. So would you say that, um, it has been, this is kind of like in the wake of, the giant women's march that happened in 2017, which also seemed to kind of ripple out and have all these things happen. But I remember that was so amazing when people came out, and it was like millions of people. It was like, I was there. I mean, it's like my spine tingles just thinking about those moments, and this is kind of reminiscent of that, isn't it?
I think so, actually, because it's interesting, because some of the commentary that I see from these women, they say I'm a nasty woman, and I'm like, what is a nasty woman? So and so I'm learning a lot about the nasty women, the pantsuit nation, the Me Too movement. there's all these women
Right.
organizations that have really, really come about, and they're starting to work together, you know, and I see them just recognizing each other and just saying there, we all have a stake in this, you know. So I like that part of it as well too, because I think as Black women, we probably felt a lot of left out of some of these things that were happening because it was really for liberal white women. And then we've been, you know, having our own issues. And it's like, when are we actually going to come together? So I actually like that they're saying, all right, we want to stand with you. We do want to come together. So now we're actually doing this together. And then even learning about the LGBTQAI plus, I think, you know, because they added a few more letters, but bringing in that community as well too. It's like, if all the oppressed people came together, we would outnumber everything, because it's really a small percentage that's actually oppressing and controlling all of us. But we all have our different divisive issues. But if we actually came together and say, let's support you today, let's support you as well, let's support each other, then we would actually we can make real change.
Exactly.
Mm.
As I recall, the reason why some people were saying I'm a nasty woman was because that's what I think Trump and others were calling Hillary Clinton, as I
Mm-hmm.
recall, right?
Yeah.
And so people say, okay, I'm going to stand with her. I'm a nasty woman too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so let's bring in Alexandra. Um, Hi. Um, Alexandra Loves initiated spiritual guide, anti-racism guide, and she is a certified love attraction coach, TM mentor. The co-creatrix of Africa Week 2020, Alexandra is also known as the Black mentor for white people who are ready, as she supports individuals and communities who are ready to commit to a lifetime of anti racist work. Welcome to the broadcast, Alexandra Loves.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this. I love how all these networks are connected. So hi to everyone wherever you are watching. Welcome, welcome to the day.
Exactly, welcome. So I'm kind of intrigued about this what you are doing there as um, the Black mentor for white people who are ready. How does that work?
Well, see, I grew up internationally, but I did have a lot of white friends. So I grew up in an international community, but I have my friends from my childhood who are white as well. And then when I moved to the States, I've always lived in white places: North Andover, Massachusetts, Boulder, Colorado, and Portland, Oregon. These are like some of the whitest cities in the United States. And because of my own journey of race identity, which was imposed on me when I came into the United States, the be having Black and African American taught to you at an age, I was already 15 before I was really exposed to those types of identities. So I went through like my own um, identity crisis, racial identity crisis, and um, when I it took a lot for me to find stability and understanding my relation to race and race identity in a place that has a lot of confusion and divisiveness and a misunderstanding, and lack of spirit when it comes to looking at race. And so because I was going through that journey, and because I was living in mostly white places going through that journey, I think naturally it created this sort of, I don't know, this like vortex where people talk to me about race, and I had this like hypersensitivity and awareness about race, but sort of kind of looking at it like an alien from like the outside, like foreign to the way it's programmed into all of us. And so as I continued on in my life and started doing spiritual guidance um, and became a counselor in that way, it was really interesting to see how people are interacting with their own identities from this place of spirit. And there started being this uptick I noticed in the last 3 4 years of my clients who were working on their spirituality, ancestry, and all of this, there started to be this big focus, without my prompting, a big focus on race and role. What is my role in with my white clients? What is my role in this, the whole thing we're calling race, and who am I, you know? And so I found that really interesting. And so for the last 3 years, I've dug way more to these subjects with white clients, and it came about or it came about organically, of just saying like, okay, I just need to let people know, like, this is what I've been doing forever, so I need to just let people know. So it's really it's not a title that anybody really gave me. It's just a title that I needed to like put somewhere so people could know that this is one of the workings that I do.
Right. So you actually explicitly say it. So I'm curious, where were you before you came here? And I've heard this before, where in other countries, especially African countries, there's, it's like a shock for people when they come to the US that there's so much concern and attention to differences in race. And actually, I don't, I, I, I kind of want to get away from, racism sort of gives weight, for me anyway, to
Yeah.
this idea that race really exists, where
Hey,
as far as I know, my understanding is, I mean, scientifically, it doesn't exist, and
oh,
people just are interpreting certain pigmentation in certain ways, and they're giving it a label, but it
yeah.
doesn't really exist. It's just in our kind of our minds. So anyway, so where did you come from, and and was that a shock that when you came here in that sense too?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. And my parents are from Louisiana. They're from the city in a levee town in Louisiana. They're from New Orleans. They're Creole from New Orleans. And so when I came here, um, I was 14 or 15, and I went to a college preparatory boarding school in New England, and it was white and it was segregated. Not because they tried to segregate it, it just was naturally segregated. And on the first or second day I was there, my counselor said, you have to join the Black Student Union, whatever it's called at the time. And I said, why? And he said, because you're Black. And energetically, immediately, I felt this like shoot, like this shackle around my neck. And I was like, what is that? What, first of all, what is Black? What does that mean? And that started this whole journey of like, what is Black? What does it mean? Because I found from, didn't matter what anybody looked like, I found from all sorts of identities that there were, that I was damned if I did, damned if I didn't, that there were certain expectations, that there was some, that there were certain acceptances that would come with, depending on how I was identifying. And that carried through. And I thought it was like, oh, it's here at this boarding school. And then I got to college in Colorado, and I was like, oh, it's here at this college. I was like, nope, this is America. I realized like this is what happens in America, in these, I should say, the United States. We're talking specifically about the United States because it plays out differently in the Caribbean, South America, although there are some intersections. And something else I want to say, note about what you said, is really important, is that especially for viewers listening, is that it's true. This whole thing about racial, there's Black people and white people, um, that's all made up. We are one human race. However, that should never be a crutch or a pass for us not to recognize that we're living in structures that have oppression and enslavement, and torture, and all of the terrible things that are attached um, to this made up thing called race, which is real because in some way we agree. So so especially in the States, uh, you know, this is what I always say: the common culture in the United States is capitalism. This is a capitalist white colony. That's where we're living. And in our school books and in our structures and in our politics, it was all based on people who believed in this type of separation and in these type of racial divides, and got scientists, I'm hoping everybody's seeing my quote, got scientists to prove that those racial divides were real. That's how we got to where we. That's one of the important. This is one of the most significant ways that we got here now is because we had scientists that proved that we are completely different and that there's superior and there's inferior. Um, so I just
It
want.
reminds me of getting scientists
Uh-huh.
to say that there is no such thing as global warming or climate change,
You can.
or that if
True.
you smoke, it's just enjoyable, and you're not going to get addicted to nicotine.
Yeah, and it's something that we have to, as my mentor says, who's from Africa, she says all the time, she's like, let your brain work. It benefits the very. Antoinette was talking about the small percentage of people who are in control. It benefits them for us not to be thinking. It benefits them for us to be separated. And one thing that really benefits them is when we can't deal with each other's pain and tolerate each other's differences. And that's one of the biggest things I see when it comes to our sort of this battleground that is race, is there that, especially, and I'm just going to call it out, especially with white people don't necessarily want to know or understand how bad it actually is because of whatever, because of guilt or shame, because of cognitive dissonance, because of a system of white supremacism. It's not in our culture to really look at Black people and Black lives and the Black movement. It's a program. And so one of the big things that's really important for us right now is to be able, especially for white people, and we all have work to do. I'm not saying Black people don't have work to do, but for white people especially, is to be able to look at what's really going on and know that it's going to be painful and awkward and hard, and there's going to be mistakes. And this is actually something that we talk about in Wild Moms International, whether people like it or not. It is something that we talk about because it is part of the Black Lives Movement, is to look at all of Black life, and that includes all of our pain, because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a group that has formed over the last couple of months as part of We the World and the We team, um, and it grew out of seeing and getting involved with all the protests that happened after George Floyd, um, and the first, we wanted to put a name to it, and people started calling it um, a racial equity group. And
Okay.
then it hit me, like a, a week a week or two after that, that gives weight to the idea that there is such a thing as race. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're saying racial equity, then you're saying you want equity between the races, and that says there are races. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
it's like, I know people, I know the interpretation on the ground makes for all of the exploitation and all of that. But still, I don't like the idea of giving weight to something that is not real. You know what I'm saying? The
That
idea
thing,
of race.
that what
So
that,
I'll just say what
mm,
we came up with, and then you can say what you
yeah.
think
Oh,
about it. So so at a certain point, uh, I think or some other people suggested calling it ending racism group, and then finally it wound up being dismantling racism, and that is the
mhm.
uh, the,
Question
the
for you.
name that is
Question,
current.
question for you, Rick. How many Black people were there at that meeting to come up with that decision?
I would say 3 out of 7, something like that,
Okay, that's
in that
good.
range.
That's good. And that's one of
Uh-huh.
the things, because just like in your campaign, as I'm looking through your campaigns, that we need more women that sit on these boards or who are in these organizations. It's the same thing. We need more Black people in these organizations and to sit on these boards, because even through our own networking, we're still a very, very, very small percentage, even though we are a large percentage of the world. You know,
Exactly,
BIPOC
exactly.
people are a large percentage of this world, where whites are actually in the minority. But when we look at a lot of these existing organizations and groups and corporations and everything else, we're the minority, but we're really not the minority. So I think that's why racial equity is actually very, very important. So
Mm-hmm.
more women on the board, more Black men, because it's like we're not seeing our Black men either. And that's one of the reasons why we have to say equity, because there's very few that are falling through the cracks. It's not like they're not valuable. They're seen as invaluable, as we see them as invaluable, but they're seen as being devalued or not even valued at all. And that's why the education and actually having to bring up these uncomfortable topics and these uncomfortable truths, and like really facing it, because I do see a lot of people, they do shy away from it because they just don't want to hear it. And they always sit there and say, it's like, if we don't talk about race, then you're racist. It's like, if you talk about race, you're racist. And if we don't talk about it, then it'll just go away. It's like, how is it going to go away? This is impossible for it to
That's
go
right.
away on its own. You cannot pray about it and make it go away. You can't
Exactly.
just ignore it and make it go away on its own. We really are actively going to have to collectively do something together, and together, so it's we the world, we the campaign, do this together to sit there and say, this is the work that has to be done, and let's get into it. Let's get to the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah. And it fluctuates. We have meetings every week, except during this time, during 11 days. But um, and and I've noticed that more there are more and more people of color who are joining the group. So my approximation of 3 out of 7 is probably inaccurate at this point, because we have a guy from Togo now. We have his name is Ifani. We have um, a guy named Panda and his wife Shai. We have uh, Catherine Davis. We have um, Sharon Ria. I mean, it's 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 getting better. Put it that way.
That's good. Awesome.
So
So what, another question for you. I know you've been asking us questions, but so the United Nations, and I know you guys are part of that. You guys have your NGO with the UN as well too, leading up to Peace Weekend and ending up at the UN. Now, I'm sure that they have actually been starting to address this, as far as like Black Lives Mattering here in the United States. But I think it's starting to be put onto the table over at the UN. Which of the NGOs do we need to partner up with and get with to sit there and get our voices heard there? What would you suggest for us?
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of NGOs now. Of course, things are kind of crazy now because of the pandemic. There
Mm-hmm.
haven't been any meetings there. Everything's online now. Um, there is this annual event that takes place at the UN in celebration of the International Day of Peace. It's called the Student Observance of the International Day of Peace. And in fact, you know Monica Willard. She's one of the
Yeah,
organizers of that,
yeah,
and it's been going on for a long time. And if you're going to talk about diversity and everything, the UN was like there before everything else. I mean, those I mean, of course, we're talking about the NGO part, not the the what do you call it, the places of power like the Security Council. I mean, there's a lot
right.
of imbalance, and people are calling for reform at the UN. But the NGO part is really I think already on this wavelength. And the the student observance has always made a point of they would bring in high school and college kids from the tri-state areas. They'd come in, they'd have like 700 kids in the room, and then they would link to conflict areas, and they'd have kids in classrooms in conflict areas linked, live. They've been doing that for 10 years, like Liberia, Sudan, uh, just Yemen. I mean, unbelievable places. And they give the kids the opportunity to interact live with the young people, and it's all run by the young people too.
Yes,
So they do presentations and stuff like that, and they're the ones who are the facilitators and the hosts and everything. And so it's always been a great thing. But anyway, but yeah, so we can talk about who to connect with. But Monica is a great start. I mean, she is right in there with
Mhm.
with the whole thing. So we'll make
Right.
that happen definitely.
Awesome.
So yeah, so what else is happening in terms of uh, what what you are both doing? So do you have um, like regular things that you're doing with
Yeah, well,
all of the
we
moms?
just came back from Portland. Pato and I just came back from Portland.
Ah,
So we had to go there to see where it all started. And also because to help exist, we're trying to figure out what we were going to do regarding if we were going to continue to do ground protests and how we were going to do ground protests, if we're going to do them in Portland. So we went up there to go and meet with some of the other leaders of organizations that were actually happening in Portland. So we just really got back like not last night, but the night before. So we went up there to host a few events, and one was with someone who's on our team, and he's actually a male. He's a Black male, but he runs this organization called Black Community of Portland. And what they do is they do community outreach. They also, every Thursday, which is today, in about an hour, they're going to deliver 140 food boxes to 140 families. So here we are still trying to recruit people to sit there and bring their bodies out because it's like if you want to support Black lives, that's how you can support Black lives. You can either go out there, throw some boxes of food in your car, go out there with the teams and help out and support the community. There's also, they do economic literacy. So this is something that's trying to empower the Black community as well as far as economic literacy classes and courses that they're offering to the community. They're also working on voter registration. So that's just one aspect that people can do. And they can also just donate directly to his organization. It's like, if you can't put your body out there, then at least chip in a couple dollars for gas, to help these people out because they're all volunteers. And I hear a lot of people saying, what can I do? What can I do? So it's like, that's something you can do right there in Portland. The other thing is that there's another guy named Jamal, and he runs Portland United for Justice and Equality. And he wants to take the peaceful and nonviolent approach to the protests. His thing is like, it's education, it's music, it's speakers, it's bringing the community together, Black and white and everybody, but with a peaceful protest, and not by any type of violence or looting or just any destruction. So he's bringing a different type of message as well too. So the Proud Boys are coming, and there's a lot of armed right-wing militiamen and those type that are coming to Portland. They've all been heading towards there, and they are planning a big event in Portland on the 26th of September. And there was a big clash that happened in Salem just a few days ago as well too, and people were injured. So, and you've seen these injuries and the harm that's happening. So we want to bring peace, and so that's the reason why we're trying to support different ways that we can sit there and still bring attention, but in a peaceful way. So they're going to have a protest in the park, far away from where the Proud Boys are. Their intention is to have a party in the park. Is called Speaker Jam. The speakers, the DJs, the music. We're doing a total different thing, an event, and away from where the Proud Boys are. Not to go over there and clash with them and be yelling at each other face to face, and who's got the biggest guns and who's going to create the most drama or the antagonization. So, there's different voices within the Black community. We're not a monolith. Not all of us. We all want the same things, but we all have different approaches and different ways to go about them. So that's one of the things that WAMI's trying to do is to highlight the different ways that we can support Black lives without it always having to be some type of a clash, you know. And
Yeah,
then of
mhm,
course Alexandra, she brings a whole different level to it as well too.
right.
yeah.
And before we go to you, Alexandra, I just wanted to pick up on on that point, which is a point of controversy I've heard in recent weeks about how the message of supporting the movement for Black lives to how that support sometimes or can be undermined because of things like clashes, which take their own attention and then become a point that's made by people like the Proud Boys, that there's no real issue here. They just want to do
Mm.
rioting and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, and
So,
that's the
so
thing that we don't know. That's the thing that we don't know. It's
mhm.
like, because if you look at the rest aren't actually black people. Before, you remember what the riots were like in Crown Heights and the riots in Virginia. We had riots going all across the country. They've only been black protests that have turned violent, but it was never, but they were always peaceful protests that turned violent. And who actually caused the violence? It wasn't us actually. When we were sitting there singing about equality and justice, we weren't actually causing the violence, but they turned violent. If you look at most of protests, 93% of the protests happening across the country are peaceful. If you look at the rest of the violence that's actually happening, as far as the fires, the looting, the rioting, and other stuff, they're not actually black people. They're white people. So
Right.
when we're sitting there seeing things, it's like, I can't tell other people how to protest, but if you're going to protest in my name, I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for our organization, because we're coming at it from a spiritual standpoint and a spiritual viewpoint. We are not going to riot and loot. The NFAC, even though they're armed, they're not rioting and looting. They're just there for self-defense. There's one thing as far as self-defense, and there's another thing that's defense. There's one thing as being aggressive, and there's another thing as being passive resistance. But either way, we're still stopping the peace, because we're trying to speak about, it's still nonviolent protest, but it is still a protest, because we are disturbing the peace everywhere, because we're trying to get people to, like, wake up and watch and listen to what's actually happening. But I don't, whatever people are doing, I don't like how it comes back on us, because it's like BLM is terrorists and we're a bunch of terrorists. And you can see we're not. I'm a very peaceful person. We don't want any destruction. We had to lead peaceful protests in our own city, even though the rest of everywhere around us within 15 minutes was violence and destruction, you
Right.
know?
And there's that issue of agent provocateur,
Mm-hmm.
people who are just coming in to make a problem, make it seem like the protest is violent, even though the intention of the marchers are not at all violence, peaceful, like you said. But then there are reasons why some people may want to make it seem like there's a problem. And what were you going to say, Alexander?
Yeah, provocateur. I like that. I don't know if I said it right, but I like that. And that happens on the ground and in Facebook groups. That happens in communities. That happens everywhere. There are people in. You'll find there are people in Facebook groups just to cause trouble, just to
Like
laugh.
trolls, basically, right?
Yeah, trolls come in many shapes and forms. It's not just people who are being mean. Sometimes it's people who are there to throw fuel on a fire. Um, I don't know exactly the point I was going to make before. While you were talking, I did post those groups in the feed so people could check them out. Uh, uh, one thing that I want to touch on is that um, there there's so many ways to be involved with the Black Lives movement. And as we were talking about before, not everybody wants to be in the streets. I don't want to be in the streets protesting for a certain reason. There's so many reasons. Like, some people want to do it because they've been doing it and they can't anymore. Some of us have some pretty serious PTSD. Some of us are really, our health is at risk. Some people are pregnant. There's so many reasons. And there is a wave of, if you're not doing the work this way, then you're not real about it, you're not serious about it, and you're not effective. And that, anybody who's watching this, I invite you to go away from that idea, because the truth is, we need all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at this problem of racism that we have, uh, one of the fastest ways for us to change this around, and believe me, it can happen quickly, is if everybody committed to something that they're doing that was effective. If every single person committed to one thing that they're doing that's effective and did it for life, this thing would be turned around. What we're experiencing now would be a thing of the past quicker than you could think. And so part of our job, and this is something that's going to start coming out regularly in WAMI, and this happens, people talk about this in many groups. This is not like an original WAMI idea. This is something that is a way of thinking that I think we should just continue perpetuating. And that is looking at degrees. You know, if you can't be out in the streets, if you're not like in the political system changing it, if you're not an accomplice within a system that can change it, then support those who are, right? Then if you can't do all that, then maybe support those who are. Maybe show up to their stuff, maybe show up to their group, support what they're doing. If you can't do that, then you take a step back and you go, okay, well, what do they need? Resources. I can give resources and connections. I can constantly be looking. I can write the letters. Like I had a realtor, somebody who connected in with me from, I can't remember what, but a realtor. And one of the things that she had heard me say is that you can change systems just by writing letters sometimes. And so what she did was she wrote to realty systems. She was like to a realty company and was like, what are we doing about Black Lives Movement or Matter? I tend to say movement, but I think she said matter. And they were like, well, nothing. And she's like, oh. And so she said, here are all the things you can do. And she just kept writing those letters. You can do that. Put it on your calendar. Do it every Sunday. You know what I mean? If everybody committed to something that they were doing, even if it's a little thing, all of us, and did it consistently, this could be turned around quite quickly. And one of the other layers I want to talk about, because I always come about this from looking at a spiritual standpoint, and that is, and this is maybe not the most popular idea, but I think it's true. That is, we are always going to act in self-interest. That's part of the spiritual journey. Is that we're satisfying our spirit. Self-interest might sound kind of harsh, but it is. We're trying to please like the journey of our spirit. That's what we're here to do, and so I think it's important to do spiritual work. You know, this is part of what I do in the Black Mentor program. Is it's important to tie in your spiritual work, the work of your spirit, into your anti-racism work or your creating equity and unity work, because if it's tied into what you desire to do in this world, then it's easier to commit to doing it for life, and you can be more creative in it. It can become more satisfying to you. Well, I think one of the reasons that people tend to like get involved and then back off and then disappear is because it's not tied into something that they can directly understand, that yes, it does affect them, that it's not, you know, especially in the United States of America, doing work around race isn't sexy. It's usually not fun. It's sort of in the spectrum of sort of selfless in some ways, and so it's something that's a little. We don't have a culture of committing to those things. We don't grow up with civil. Most of us don't grow up with civil commitments. The duty to others. We don't grow up. It's a very individualist nation. So that's why I look at it from like what inside your spirit, what are you creating in this world, and how do you tie that in to your anti-racism work and your creating equity work? And when people do it that way, then they tend to keep with it, and they can tend to bring others, and they teach their families and they teach their children. So that's something that I that's the work that I do, and it's something that I also often share with WAMI. And those degrees of how you can be involved and committing to be involved. If you're not the person on the street or the person in the Congress or the person holding the space or the group or the traveling to do it, then you can be the person who's supporting it. You can be the person who's writing letters. You can be the person, if you're a Facebook warrior, you can be the person posting every 3 days, every single day, getting people involved, tagging your friends. If you can't do that, you can open your wallet. If you can't open your wallet, you can bring whatever working and business you can to supporting those who are doing it for free, right?
Exactly.
There's always a way.
Yeah, you know, and you're touching on the reason, one of the reasons that I started We the World 22 years ago. When I started it, I created like a booklet when I was going around trying to find people to bring in money, but also to be part of the governing board. And there were a couple of pages in the booklet that talked about the psychological reason to start it, which would be this idea that we all, because of what happens in our childhood, we all have a void in our lives that just happens because of the problems and the pressures and all the things that happen as we're growing up. And filling that void, there are so many different ways to fill the void. I mean, some people become addicts to fill the void, or they become shopaholics, or they watch television, or you know, there's a million ways to fill that void. But one of them could be to be of service to others and to contribute to the well-being of other people, and giving people ways to plug in to actually make that happen. That was one of the intentions of creating We the World, and now it's happening. And I notice it's so powerful very often because, you know, things, if you consume any kind of media, you get the daily dose of doom every day, right? With all the problems that are going on, right?
Doom
So
and control and doom.
yeah. So if you are actually in the mode of doing something about it, and not just like, you know, running away from the headlines or complaining about the headlines, but you're actually doing something about it, it's actually very therapeutic for you to be, you know, you feel like you're accomplishing something, and you actually are. You know, the butterfly effect, right? A butterfly flaps its wings in Peru, and it's somehow that action is somehow connected to a typhoon in the Philippines a few weeks later. There is a connection. So whatever we're doing, you know, we're in this interdependent world. So the smallest thing that we do is going to have a ripple effect. So anyway,
Yes.
so I'm just adding to what you were saying. And by the way, when Alexandra is saying WAMI, just so people know, it's Wall of Moms International,
Oh,
WOMI. Just because WAMI is it's nice sounding word, but what's that? So
yes, yes.
WAMI also, WAMI also, I looked it up too. WAMI also stands for Weapons of Mass Instruction.
very good.
I love
An
that.
old
I
a friend
watched
of
last
yeah.
night. I was sitting there watching on Netflix this thing called The Social Dilemma, and this is really crazy because it actually talks about how social media, how they need to put the humane agenda back to social media, how all these ex people who were working for Facebook and Google and Instagram, how they wanted to create something good and powerful, and then it turned into something else that is turned into something of destruction and depression and evil and other things like that, because they were like able to sway, you know, a lot of agendas, you know. And one of the things, so I really love the documentary, but one thing I can't say is like they do sway how the media does look at things, but the media does not sway the police killing black people. That's the police killing black people, is that's what they're doing, you know, because it's being highlighted, and because they've supported different things as far as right against left, us against them, you know, and other things like that. That's, you know, that's where the money is being made. But unless you use it, you know, so social media is something that we can actually use for good. It's like how you have we the campaign, you know, We the World, the works that, you know, like Alexandra is suggesting that individuals can actually do, you know, use your social media to sit there and help and do something that's good for people, instead of the negativity and then turning people away or turning people off or turning people into something that they don't actually want to become involved or a part in. But, you know, for good, they can use it for good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
No, go
and
ahead.
I want to add also, this is something to be aware of for all of you out there that are curious about being more involved, and in whatever way it is that race itself is divisive. It's an abomination of nature. And so everything that every time you touch it, you know, even if you have two people who have really great intentions, who are going to create something that helps, they're still going to have to get that dirt of racism on them. It's an entity. And and so that's why you can get like two awesome people together who are like going to try to create something, or group together, and they all have the same intention, and then all of a sudden like the dirt starts getting on them and the fighting starts happening and everything. And so what I would say is that for those of you who are curious, and it's already it's already daunting enough to be interacting with such a divisive issue that is divisive and deceptive and an abomination of nature. um, know that it would be wise to think of yourself as a warrior, um, because you are going to interact on top of what I just said. You're going to interact with uh, uh, people who are still dealing with their own pain in a way that where they're going to bring their pain to you, and that is, um, I think that's one of the big reasons why people tend to back off. One of the big reasons people tend to back off. They're curious. They're not sure. They're vulnerable. Just starting to interact with racism and racial, groups talking about it, and then having to deal with people who and talk to people, interact with people who are deep in rage and anger, which for a lot of people is very valid, is also, is also very daunting. It can be scary. And so just know that that is something that you will have to deal with, and to, you know, be calm inside yourself and know that if you're born at this time, like, part of the war that's going on is within you. It's not really with other people. It's within you. How do you deal with this other person's pain? How do you process what's going on? What is that part of you that wants to flee and get out of here? What's that? How can you fight that war within yourself that knows what's right and knows what's within integrity? That part of you that wants to control your safety. That's the war that I'm interested in, actually, of interacting with people.
Yeah. So one of our dear friends, Sharon Ria, has started, it's kind of like a movement called No Judgment, Just Love.
Mm.
And it's and it applies to yourself as well as to other people. But it made me think of that as you were talking about. It's like the self protection, self care that we have to have as we want to, move forward in this work that we're doing. And one of the things that we're focusing on with We the World and the We campaign is this idea of creating a cultural shift towards we consciousness, a way. So we say, going from a me society like the M to a we society like the W, right?
Mhm.
And and the idea of that is to have a society that prioritizes the health and well-being of each member of the society, and that would be then part of the policies, the laws, and the culture, um, so that it's so and part of the lessons of this whole COVID era that we're in now are uh, this idea that the well-being of each individual actually affects the survival and well-being of the whole community. And that is now an idea that is explicit, because of, like if there's one person who has the COVID-19, that could endanger the well-being of the whole community. Now, of course, this idea of we consciousness is not just about the disease, but also about the well-being in every way of a person. If they're being discriminated against, if they're they're in a job, or they're in three jobs, none of which pays a living wage, or they're on and on. All of those things are ways that people are, so the idea is to change the culture and the awareness so that it becomes normal that anyone who's suffering, actually, if that does not work for the whole community.
Spread that virus of love.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
and especially in our conflicts, especially in how we deal each other, because we're in this world of internet, and that we can all talk to each other. What the internet has shown us, and what especially social media has shown us, is that the diversity of opinion and how to do things and how things are perceived is infinite. It is infinite. You can have one person say something in what we think are in words, which we think words and sentences are concrete, and contracts and things and words are concrete, which they're not. But we are programmed to think that when we see it written down, that it's concrete. And look at how you can have 50 comments and everybody sees it a completely different way. Look how you can have one situation and this group over here is saying like, this is what happened. And this group over here is saying, this is what happened. This group over here is saying, this is what happened. Right. I mean, so especially right now is a time for us to inject love into all of our interactions. So much of the conflict that I see, especially when it comes out of online, is a lack of love for someone that you feel like you might disagree with, or you feel that you know what they said, or you think you know what their tone is, or you assume you know them because you've seen a few of their posts. you know so if we can inject it, and that's the thing, injecting love doesn't mean injecting butterflies and lollipops. It means coming with kindness, it means coming with compassion, it means treating each other like the human beings we are, instead of like we're all on a Jerry Springer show.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
We're all connected, and love is the only thing that will bring us together. It's like the rainbow connection, like your little friend back there sings. From wrong. That's honestly, I just want to point out, if for anybody listening, the rainbow connection is one of the best prayers for our times right now. That song is a prayer. Go look it up and listen to it. The words are amazing.
Hmm. Well, Kermit over here reminds me of our dear friend Carol Hart, and I don't know if either of you knew her. She's no longer around, but she was one of the people that helped to launch Sesame Street, and we collaborated with her on a project called An Urgent Message from Your Children, and it's about children 12 years old and younger creating videos where they express their fears, their concerns, and their hopes for the future of the planet. And people can go there to see those videos and the invitation video. If you go to weyourchildren.org, weyourchildren.org, and so she was also a filmmaker, and she did the the film, the documentary on the 13 indigenous grandmothers from around the world. It's called For the Next 7 Generations. So anyway, so she's a dear friend, and I think of her sometimes with Kermit.
That's cute.
Yeah. So Antoinette, you had a video that you were thinking of
Yes.
playing. Tell us about that.
Okay, I totally forgot that I have so many different songs of totally different things. So I have a meditation one, and I have another one about where I sing about life after death, about where we're going. It's kind of like a reggae remix version. But this one I actually want to share is the one that I did write for when we started doing our protest. I did 3 different versions, but this one was after the second one, and it's called Stand Up Strong. So this is like I was writing the song, me and my girlfriend, I was writing the music. My friend Nichelle was over there. She's one of our admin moderators for the WAMI team. And one of my neighbors, Atara, who's doing the vocals. And then this is from our second protest from the city that we were actually doing in the city of Lake Elsinore. And after the first one, the second one, after we were getting threats from people, just like how they did in Kenosha, there was people who came out there who was like on social media threatening to either run us over, to either drive us over, or they wanted to open carry, and they wanted to protect this city that they didn't actually live in. These are people, some of them lived here and some of them didn't actually live here. And they want to come up here and they want to stop us from doing our protest. But when the police actually saw us doing the protest, with no violence, no destruction. We just said, let us say what we have to say. Let the kids say what they want to say, because we didn't actually organize a protest. We were just there to protect the kids. The police contacted us and they said, we want to march with you and we will protect you, you know, so if anything happens, they will be there with us. So we actually did this together, and the police actually, one of the lieutenants brought his 6-year-old nephew. So here was a protest where we had families involved, men, women, and children, entire families and stuff. So, and this is my tribute song. All right, check it out.
Yeah.
All right, optimize. All right. Go.
Stand Up for Justice. This group marching down Main Street in Lake Elsinore today, calling for an end to police brutality and racial injustice. And they also wanted to make sure their message hit home in other ways.
There you have it.
Wow. Fabulous. Fabulous.
Keep going. Oh,
That is so fabulous. Wow. It's
Thank
very,
you.
it's moving and engaging and just great. Thank you. And Um, any last words before we finish up, Alexandra?
Yeah, I would just say for those of you who are watching, um, if you're born in this time, then you have the ability. Your ancestors created you and your spirits created you for a reason. um, when we're made, those beings have a record of what's going on and the potential of what's going on. So if you're born in this time and you're curious and you're noticing, then it's in you to do something. It's in your spirit to do something. And so I encourage all of you to pledge to yourself or your community or your family to to really think about it first, and then pledge to create anti-racism for life, and hopefully it won't have to be anti-racism in your lifetime. Hopefully we can move past that, and it can be, now unity and the equity. But right now, the anti-venom that we need is anti-racism. And so I hope that's something that everybody can find out, can consider, and pledge to commit to for their life.
So how can people connect with both of you, with WAMI, Wall of Moms International, and how, you want to give out your website or both of your websites and
Yeah, and I'll
get
put it in
involved?
the link too. And I'll go first because I think Antoinette has more to connect with than I do. um,
No, no, no. You have a fabulous amount of things to connect to. Yeah.
okay, so we are both in WAMI, Wall of Moms International. We have a public page and a group. Join both, follow and join both. And then for me personally, I'm at www.alexandraloves.com. Love has an S on the end, alexandraloves.com. And that is where I work with people in their spiritual work, but also in their Black Mentor for White People Who Are Ready program. And so I think sessions are open all through October, September, October right now. So you can find me. I'm open to working with people there at alexandraloves.com. And then also Africa Week 2020, which I mentioned before, our big event is next week. So connecting Africa and her diaspora everywhere. So you can find me at Africa Week 2020 as well.
That sounds great. And,
Yeah.
we ought to get that on the Global Unity calendar. We have this shared free public international calendar. It's called Global Unity Calendar.
Oh,
And
wow. I'll
you,
write that down.
yeah, you can find it by going to we.net. That's an easy way to find it. But you can also go directly there by going to globalunitycalendar.org.
Okay.
And you
Thank
can
you.
you can submit it. There's a quick turnaround approval process, but anybody can submit
Thank
events.
you.
Yeah, definitely.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. And Antoinette, how do people connect with you?
Well, so we are at Walla Moms International at the Facebook page, on the Facebook group, the website, and the Instagram. I also have a coexist page. I have Daughters of the Divine Mother page and group, Pato Bantan Spiritual Family, and the Pato Bantan fan page and his website. And then those are just some of them, but yeah, you'll find us online, and I'll drop the comments as well inside of your live feed as well too. And then my message too is, like, since this is the theme is women, and just like the song Stand Up Strong, I just really want to encourage all the women out there, to use your voice, use your body, use your money, use whatever you got. But now's the time that women can actually move more inside of like leadership role positions, who can actually have a voice that people can actually take a listen to. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Don't be hiding. Don't be staying on the sidelines. But there's nothing wrong with empowering the women. My husband empowers me a lot. He's always pushing and supporting me in everything, all the work that I actually do and stuff. So, get yourself a good man that's going to be supportive of you, and just get out there, and just do your thing, because it's really the time. The divine feminine time has actually started quite a few years ago, but we're really on the rise. So feel that empowerment and go out there and do whatever it is.
Definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
So, well, this has been great. This has been a fabulous conversation. I'm going to make a couple of announcements. Thank you both so much
Thank you.
for being here. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that today at 6 p.m. there's a special event where you can meet the women of the women of We the World. So it's funny to say that, right? But and it wasn't organized by me at all. I would say most of the coordinators and activists who are working with We the World are women. I mean, almost all. I mean, it's like um, there are a handful of men. Um, so I'm going to be tuning into this tonight at 7. Uh, but so I just figured I'd mention that. And actually, okay, so let me go back to Spotlight. Okay, so at in general, you can check the schedule of what's happening for the rest of 11 Days of Global Unity by going to 11daysofglobalunity.org. And there you can see a link to the 11 Days Trello board, which pretty much has every program or event that we're doing listed there. Um, and you can also see what's coming up with the TeleSummit panels. You can watch previous ones as well, like the Summit on the Future of Humanity, which is what kicked off the whole 11 days this year with our TeleSummit series that featured Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Vandana Shiva and a few other panelists. But Archbishop Tutu was really speaking his mind about he talks about the protests after George Floyd, he talks about COVID, he talks about climate change, and it's a really powerful panel. So you can go to our We Campaign Facebook page to see that recording. It's facebook.com/the We Campaign or our YouTube page, youtube.com/We the World org. And of course, to learn more about We the World and the We Campaign, go to we.net. I wanted to make the point that Alexandra has been making for the last hour, which is that if we want to transform society, it's not a spectator sport. Collaboration is key. And if you want to collaborate with We the World, you can go to we.net/partner. Very simple, all lowercase. And that is where you can collaborate as an organization or as an individual and join the We team. So with that, like I was saying before, we're going from a me society to a we society, right? And we is like 3 I's that make a we: inspire, inform, and involve. So let's all make it the transformation that we're looking for, make that cultural shift. Thank you all, and it's been great to be on with you all. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
I